Hello and welcome to Data Planet. I'm Emma Davis, and today's guest is Christine Royston, Chief Marketing Officer at Wrike. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with some context. What is Wrike, and who are your customers?
Sure. So, Wrike is a trusted platform for delivering complex work. And that work can be managed across humans and agents. We've been around for 20 plus years, very focused on enterprise work management. And if you think about the organizations we support, we can help a variety of industries, variety of functions. Where I'd say we really do our best work is around those workflows that are most important to companies. So, core workflows, maybe you're a marketing agency and you've got to figure out how do you manage all of those different projects that you're working on for a variety of customers. Or you're a manufacturing company and you need to figure out how do you continually innovate on new product designs and bringing products to market. So it's pretty fun to work for a company that has that variety of customer types and variety of use cases.
I hear you on that. I'm in, the agency world, and it was my professional solution to not being able to choose a major. All right, so you are Chief Marketing Officer there. You've been with Wrike for 2 years, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is your focus as CMO at Wrike?
So it is all about driving growth. I cover the full breadth of marketing across communications, brand, demand, product, and it's really about how can we partner across the organization with sales, customer success, with the product and eng teams to drive growth and drive value for our customers. So certainly, always putting the customer first. We're looking at how do we launch solutions that are most helpful to them? How do we make sure that they get the most value out of them? But ultimately, when I talk to my board and my CEO, it is about driving growth.
Yeah. And you talked about the individual functions underneath your umbrella. For each of those functions, are you providing them with, here's your goal, here's your KPI? Does that look different across those functions, or are you all working towards the same goal and then it's up to them to figure out how does that look different for product versus demand versus
Mhm.
communications?
So ultimately, I want the whole marketing team, all of my leaders, to feel ownership over the total business results we need to deliver. But the way we deliver it is that you do make sure that everybody sort of knows what piece of that they own driving, where they need to support, where they need to own certain numbers, own certain channels, certain audiences. So it is something where I want all of us to try to hit that number together. But I've
Hmm.
got to make sure that we have the plan that will actually deliver on those growth goals.
Awesome. And so how does that translate into actual operation within the team? At what point are they coming together on goals versus going their separate ways?
Sure. So, one of the things that I noticed when I joined Reich was that we were operating in silos, and that's not unusual, for marketing teams. I've seen
Hmm.
this in various places, and I'd say it wasn't because we were not a collaborative team. It was really how we had structured the way work was planned, the way it was executed, how we were reporting on things. Everyone was very narrowly focused on, this is my work and that is what I care about. So it wasn't the people. It was really the process and how we had things set up in order to execute on business. And so I think the functional design, you need functional experts. You need people who understand how channels work, who understand creative and well written content. But if you're centering your organization around functions, you're going to get these siloed functional results that lack this integrated strategy and really also can create a disjointed customer journey. If you think about how the customer experiences an engagement with a brand.
So what does that look like, that disjointed experience for the customer? Or how did you identify this is a very siloed situation?
So, part of it was observing how people were planning and just looking at, okay, what is obviously we use Wrike for everything we do. So, how were our projects set up? How were we actually looking at capacity planning? And it was very much function by function versus looking at we're trying to drive this objective or we're focused on this particular audience. And so part of it was I could dig in and sort of see the way the work was happening. And then another thing that we've transitioned to over the past 2 years has been, we are very much focused on getting people into the product to experience the product. But you do need to make sure that people are aware of the brand. They're doing their research offline even before they come to your website. And so, how
Mhm.
do you make sure that you are out there where they're looking for information? You might be engaging with them with thought leadership or helpful, informative content before they actually get to going into a trial or talking to sales. And that's where you want the message to be similar, the experience to be similar through those touch points, even if they're not ready quite yet to talk to you about a purchase.
Sure. Otherwise, you might be targeting the wrong person and focusing, sales resources on someone who's not going to close, or getting the exact right person, but they're like, "What am I doing here?" And they're so confused or, out of place that you miss that opportunity to actually convert them.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
cool. All right, so that's what that looks like, and it sounds kind of similar to the is it the vector theory of management or something,
Mhm.
where you want everybody pulling in the exact same direction to sort of maximize the overall magnitude of the vector, whatever. And so when you have these silos, everybody's productive, they mean well, but there might be some slight variation in the overall direction as opposed to all of that summing up to
Mhm.
significant movement in one direction. So, how do you address that?
So we initially tried to address it by building out an integrated campaign function and looking at, how do we align and create all of the different touch points through the journey. We shared learnings across the team. We'd cross team QBRs, but we were still seeing silos. And so realizing it was really more of a process and structure issue. This year, we reorganized into cross functional pods. So instead of organizing the teams around a specific channel or discipline, we're looking at what projects, what initiatives do we drive with a team that has a mix of demand generation and digital designers, content marketers, product marketing, and other functions. So that they're looking at who is the audience that we're going after, or is there a specific business outcome we're trying to drive? So, for example, we have a pod that's focused on the manufacturing vertical. So that product lifecycle management that I mentioned, how do we drive awareness and consideration and pipeline from those audiences? We have another pod that's focused on increasing brand awareness and creating thought leadership. And so we're really trying to look at what are the outcomes and who do we need to have in the room in order to plan and execute and analyze that. One thing I'd say is we did not restructure the official reporting lines. So we did not restructure the org. We changed the way the work flowed and the way that cross-functional teams came together in order to solve problems. And there are pods that are ongoing. We know there are core audiences we need to focus on. We have to build brand awareness, but then there are also some ad hoc pods where we might spin them up because we have a big product launch or we have a big event that we're planning, and we need to make sure we've got all the right resources for that point in time to get the work done, and
Mhm.
then they move on to other priorities and initiatives.
There's so much that I love about this. In particular, I love the idea of all the things that you can learn from the individual pods that then can be like magnified across the whole group as opposed to, that one set of experimentation across the verticals in the siloed format. It just seems like you can move and adapt so much faster, um, and address that magnitude and direction concern. But the thing that I immediately have some tightness in my chest around is thinking about getting everybody on board with a change like that, where suddenly, I knew what a good job looked like before, and now my work looks a little different. Maybe I'm working with someone I'm not used to working with. Maybe my measures of success feel a little bit different? Like, how do you get everybody on board with a change like this?
Sure. So, change management, no matter what it is always difficult. The first thing I did was make sure, my leadership team understood. Here's the why. What issues do we think we're going to run into? Are there functions where, I as the leader am not thinking that this is going to totally disrupt that function and we could have gaps? Or are there people that we need to actually bring in to the alignment early and kind of get them to be champions of this and help them to drive sort of the adoption across the team? And I would say, in general, people is and I think this is true of some teams, they were eager to be part of the planning process early on. I think the way some marketing teams and ours was set up was almost this, production line where you'd get a brief or you'd get a task, you would execute on it, and then it would go to the next person. So I saw two areas where I thought the teams would be eager to move to this model. One is understanding the work that they did. What was that eventual outcome? And not
Mhm.
just the piece that they delivered, but they contributed to this broader initiative. What was the whole initiative delivering? Because people want to see that impact on the business. And then the other piece was being part of the planning process and being able to share their ideas. And as a leader, that's what I'm always looking for is where are the best ideas? It doesn't need to be the function that's executing on that. It could be somebody came from a new company and said, "We tried this at my last company." Or it could be someone who said, "I saw this creative out in the market. It's amazing. Can we try something like that?" So I think, I was seeing some pockets just in feedback from teams that led me to believe we'd have some openness to trying something like this.
Mhm.
Um, but we're still definitely learning. We're about a quarter in, and we've captured feedback from the teams to figure out what do we need to adjust. What did I not think about when we rolled this out?
Mhm.
So I don't want to pretend that this is done and perfect and working at 100%.
Mhm.
I think there's still opportunity to evolve and look
Mhm.
at that day to day and how do we think about how those teams operate, what goals we set for them.
Mhm. There always will be, but you heard it here first. The Christine's pod model of excellence TM. That's guaranteed to work from day one. Um, so, did you get significant pushback from either your leadership team or other folks on the team? And how do you proceed with that? Or was it because people felt pretty bought in and excited to see what outcomes they could drive, it was, they were pretty open to like, yeah, we'll try something new.
I would say people were open to trying something new, and that's what I love about our team and great marketers in general. They're willing to experiment, they're curious, they want to try new things. I think a lot of it came down to sort of the mechanics of things where people would say, okay, if I'm part of this pod, what happens when another request comes in that is high priority? How do I prioritize, that versus that?
Mhm.
Or we've always done this project every year, every quarter, every week. Do I stop doing that? Do I continue doing it? So it was a lot of sort of discussions around how do we prioritize because I didn't want people to see this as another thing we were doing. I wanted them to see it as we're transforming how we work and how we prioritize the work.
Mhm. Well, I think there's probably some credit due to you without knowing you super well, Christine, if people are on board with like, yeah, let's really shake things up. And I think changes like that tend to beget more changes, right? Like, oh, wow, now that we've sort of broken the mold or we're thinking outside the box, what if we think outside the box on this other thing? Like, it can become chaotic also, but there's this real energy of, well, now that I'm looking at this a different way, I'm kind of seeing this a different way too. And
Mhm.
so I imagine those learnings will sort of compound over time. But is your goal to test this for some period of time and then restructure? Okay, now everybody has a better understanding of how these things fit together. Let's go back to our old structure, but with this knowledge and understanding. Is it, we don't know how high is up with this pod structure, so we're just gonna roll with this and keep iterating and see pros and cons and will change in the future if we need to? Like, how far out does your roadmap go on this?
So I believe this is the way that organizations will continue to work,
Mm,
and it will probably evolve as well. And certainly there are some companies that operate in this way already. I don't want to say that I invented this and cross functional work never happened prior. Um, I think it was new for our organization. And as I think about, how teams will operate, especially with AI, I think it's going to change how the pods operate, how marketing operates. And we look at, how can you put a group of smart, motivated people on a problem to solve or an outcome to drive and have them bring their expertise, and with AI and automation, they'll be able to transition some of the repetitive work. They'll be able to partner with AI to brainstorm, to analyze data, to think about new ways of doing things. But we'll still need the humans to come together and work together with agents, in order to actually drive the outcomes. So I think this will continue to iterate. And I certainly looked at this as I want to test it out, see if it works here at Reich. I had strong conviction that it would, having seen similar things elsewhere.
mhm.
But I think it will evolve, and we'll look at, do we need more pods? Do we need to include more people across the organization? One of the things we talked about early on is, these are marketing pods. This is how we get work done. We certainly work really closely with product and with the go to market teams. What are those connection points? We have some of those connection points today, but as you think about it, how a company evolves, do you have more cross organization pods that are kind of driving towards these things and operating in that manner?
Yeah, super cool. What does one thing come to mind when I say, what's the coolest thing you've learned so far, or the thing that you're most excited about having, gone through the first quarter of testing, which is probably the rockiest period of this that you'll experience, but anything that you're excited about so far?
Uh, I mean, I love seeing the creative ideas coming from the teams to be able to say, this is the thing that we want you to deliver on. And I might have ideas, your manager might have ideas, but we want you to take the time to work together and figure it out, and come back to us with some proposals. If you'd say we have 10 ideas, we can't execute on all of them, get some feedback on those. Um, so I think that's been pretty interesting to see, and even within that, being able to share learnings across the pods, and that's the piece that I'm excited for next. Is how do I make sure I'm facilitating that cross pod learning, where teams are figuring out, we were able to automate this piece of a process, and this is the tool I used, or this is the way I set up an agent to do this. And I look at that and I say, okay, how do we do that across all of the pods, across all of the teams? Because we really do want to make sure that we're creating systems. I love experimentation, but I want to make sure that we're creating systems in order to really make sure that we're able to accelerate growth.
Yeah, awesome. Christine, this was so fascinating. It's so cool seeing this, experimentation. I'm used to thinking about experiments in terms of, new channels, new types of campaigns, and, how do you know what's working and how not? This sort of operational experiment within the marketing function. So fascinating. I appreciate you sharing your experience and your expertise with us today. Listeners, if you want to learn more about Christine and about Reich, details will be in the show notes. Christine, thank you so much for joining me today on Data Planet.
Thank you.